You're listening to Learning Curve, the podcast that explores the use of AI in real world, real life situations. I'm Matt Sharp, Flexion's maestro of the machines and lead LLM ringmaster.
And I'm Holly Fake, part researcher, part designer, and full-time data-driven sense maker.
Curious about AI and what it means for your business? Stick around. We've got the real world insights, practical examples, and honest conversations you need to get started. So, everyone is talking about AI, but fewer people are talking about the rules that shape how it actually gets used. Today's episode is all about AI policy, why it matters, who should be involved, and what it really looks like to create guidelines that people can actually follow. Whether you're actively using AI, just starting to explore it, or wondering what responsible use even means, this conversation is for you. And to do that, we have here joined with us is Flexion's very own technology leader, Scott Hasse. Scott, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, first of all, hey Matt, hey Holly, glad to be here. So my name's Scott Hasse. I'm one of the technology leaders within Flexion. My role there has been a long-term role. I was one of the founding partners 26 years ago and have basically evolved from a hands-on practitioner for many, many years, working individually and in teams to help grow our consulting practice and our project practice. And as the organization has scaled, my role has focused more and more on mechanisms to help the company continue to grow successfully and not compromise on the quality of our delivery or our employee experience.
So, I imagine with 26 years experience as a technology leader here, you've probably seen a lot of ebbs and flows. How is AI different?
Yeah, definitely have seen technology come and go. And I used to tell people, oh, if you're thinking about a career in technology, if you love learning, that's great. You're never more than 3 years away from being a complete expert in any given technology. You're never more than 3 years also away from being basically irrelevant. And I think AI has changed that dynamic fundamentally. Number one, the acceleration of the pace. So if it was 3 years, now it's something more like 3 weeks before you're looking for the next new innovation that's going to maybe really change things significantly. So the pace of it is definitely a differentiator from previous trends we've seen. I mean, I think the AI trends we're seeing now are more disruptive to our industry than anything that we've seen prior. Um, there's also a factor of the impact on the work experience, kind of regardless of technology. So, okay, let's say a new tool comes out that enables big data analytics or something like that. That's going to change a segment of the industry, or a new development language that's really great at solving certain problems is going to have a segmented impact. But the trend in AI is impacting, or it should be impacting, every practitioner, every technologist, including also the surrounding disciplines around the business analytics part and the user experience pieces. All of those are being influenced by AI, and that's a big difference compared to what we've seen prior.
Yeah, I think if you're in any role, you're definitely experiencing the transformation of what these tools can do. And I think that kind of brings us to the heart of what we want to speak about today, which is AI policies. And I know you were instrumental in helping create Flexion's AI policy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so um, AI is Flexion is a technology company. We work to create options for our customers, and we are always working to innovate and foster an innovative culture. And so we are embracers of AI, certainly. And we had a little bit of what I call a sort of kerfuffle uh, as a part of that innovation, where we were working to create some company internal language models that to for experimentation purposes, and we ended up using information uh, from various company um, systems, And when we came out with kind of what that experiment looked like, some of the folks were surprised about that. They were surprised that some of their work product was used in this way. And it led to this realization of, oh, yeah, we actually have an issue here that we should probably address head on versus kind of glancing by it. And that is how we're going to treat uh, AI with Flexion. What, how do we approach that? How do we, how are the, what, Flexioneers are what we call the folks that work at Flexion. How is the work product of Flexioneers related to AI, both internally and in the work that we do? And so it was an opportunity to really set expectations for this new and very disruptive trend. So that kind of laid the framework, or laid at least the foundation for the need of an AI policy for Flexion.
Yeah, I remember that being part of the team that worked on those AI tooling is there was a lot of fear. I mean, there's generally a lot of fear nowadays of AI taking people's jobs, and this felt to some people like almost a direct attack, even though what we created was nowhere near the level of, you know, doing anything like that. It was very much research purpose. It was just around, hey, let us see what we can do and understand better this technology. So, what were some of the things we aim to solve with the AI policy?
Yeah, so that experience exposed, I mean, we value diverse perspectives at Flexion. Like that's how we get good solutions. And that sort of initiator, at least for me, made me more aware of like, oh wow, we've got an array of perspectives on AI here at Flexion, all the way from like we have to go full bore. I am super excited about this too. I would really prefer if that didn't exist, and I would like to conscientiously object to the use of it, and everything in between all of that. And so the the what we wanted to accomplish, well, from my perspective, I will say, and um, I'll share my perspective, but we did bring together a cross-disciplinary group, and we tried to capture some of those more conscientious objecting perspectives on the team that we assembled to work on the policy. And so I thought that was important. But I think there were really kind of four things that were, to me, very personally important that we would get out of um, creating that policy. So one is that we underscored that AI innovation is fundamentally important at Flexion. We have to be able to innovate. We're not going to put artificial barriers up to innovating with AI. The second is we want to use AI as a human enabling technology. So we want to invest and create with the human at the center of that. So enabling technology versus replacing technology. Um, there was a dimension where I think we need to create explicit awareness of your work at Flexion and how that's going to be related to AI, and basically an opt-in or kind of a consent awareness and consent around, hey, my work product um, that I do in this environment is going to be used in AI, or if it is in these specific ways, so that people were aware of that. Um, and then the fourth piece was to make sure that with with the innovation came a responsibility for our employee data, our customer data, our company data, that we're protecting that as well as we always have protected that in the context of that. So it's a component of that overall policy. So I think it was those four things that I was hoping we could really accomplish as a part of creating that policy.
That's really helpful. And it's helpful to think about when we're considering about like what influences helped shape this policy. Were there any North Star principles or different resources that help guide the decisions as the policy took shape?
Yeah. I mean, I think there was definitely this idea of this is an existential moment for our industry, and there are going to be winners and losers as a part of that, and we want to be winners. So we need to be innovating. That was hands down, no question. We need to make it clear to everyone. And this, that wasn't necessarily going to be a 100% popular opinion within Flexion, probably still is not. But we need to be a part of the innovation that is happening, or we're going to be left by the wayside. We need to bring that value to our customers. We can do it in a very responsible, good way, but we need to be doing that, or we're going to be replaced by folks that are doing that. So I think that was definitely one of the big things. Um, and the other one is, the flip side of that was, and we want to enable the human, we want to use these technologies as human enabling um, mechanisms so that we are not, uh, as practitioners, as good experienced practitioners, we are enabling our people with knowledge to do their jobs better and more effectively and not replacing that. We are augmenting people in good ways with the way that we approach that. So I think those were definitely a couple of the North Star principles. I think not surprising people about that as well. So just, level setting folks within the organization to say, okay, I understand. And that may mean some people may say, well, I guess this maybe isn't the organization for me then. Um, or maybe the industry for me if that's the way it's going to be. But to make that explicitly clear as upfront, this evolution's happening all the time. But as upfront as we can for people, given that this innovation is happening around us, all around us.
You said part of the reason we created this AI policy was because of this kerfuffle. And you talk about incorporating diverse perspectives. How did you actually go about doing that? How did you navigate the conflict of making sure that we were seeing multiple point of views and incorporating that into the AI policy?
Yeah, so Flexion has this great way of getting stuff done called work items. So it's a way of taking a small piece of work, formulating that, and then putting it out to the company and having people opt into participation in that. And so, Matt, you were integral in the creation of the work items that led to the policy. And, I was one of the participants in that. And the people that volunteer, it's always a mixed bag, but sort of putting a reach out to the people that I knew would be more on the like critical or conscious objecting side to say, hey, this is important that we get this right. We need diverse perspectives to make this as good as we can make it. Would you consider bringing your diverse perspective to this group? May not be the easiest, but it's going to be better for that. And so we did I think, an okay job of assembling those diverse perspectives into the policy work. So it wasn't something that came down from on high. Um, oh, okay, now thou shalt innovate with AI. It was a bunch of good conversations during the crafting of that policy. Um, with those folks representing, researching and bringing their research and representing that into how things got put together. And so that led to um, not, this big step function of like, we've created this policy, now we're going to roll it out. But it was much easier. The kerfuffle piece, at least from where I was sitting, was really gone when we rolled the policy out because some of the people that cared the most had already had a hand in crafting that. And so that was a technique that I think was very valuable for us to do that.
I imagine that really increases buy-in.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's harder, it's harder. The process is harder up front, but you end up, I think, with something better in the end. And then the buy-in is a great side effect of that as well.
Do you remember some of those conversations that came up?
Oh gosh, Matt, maybe you could help me out here too. Um, yeah,
There was a lot of conversations around being able to opt in and opt out of, of having their data used for similar research.
yeah, some of the how do we consider the environmental impact, or how do we review and consider that as a part of the overall solution, I think was a component that was an interesting part of that discussion as well.
So we've created an AI policy. How do you think we can make this usable, not just, a document or a piece of paper?
Yeah, I think that's the risk with any policy, is that you make it and then you never really look at it and life carries on. And I think there are a few ways that the policy, I think, becomes real at Flexion. One is that if there's ever this perception of like an artificial barrier to innovation, for the sake of it, uh, I think and expect that the policy would be a great reference to say, let's just remember we are innovators here. We need to move this forward. And conversely, the sort of the tension with that, if there's ever a like, wow, this new cool tool is super awesome, but we don't know what it does with the data, there's a tempering effect to that as well. And that is very real. That piece of it is the review and the consciousness around the tooling that we're utilizing and implementing for our customers around the data privacy and security aspects of that stuff. So I think those two ways um, are important. It gives us it's set, I think it worked to set expectations well for people at Flexion, but it also gives us a much better answer to folks that are in the interview process coming in to say, okay, well, what is your attitude around um, AI? And we can share that as well, in that very upfront way to say, okay, well, here's what you should expect. Like you should expect we're going to be all in as, on innovation and that sort of thing. So I think those make it real. It's not like people are looking at this every day, though. I mean, it's definitely there in the background, but it is having effect.
Part of the reason we started this podcast is because I think there's a lot of people wrestling with these issues right now. And one of the things that springs to mind for me is like, what advice would you give to leaders who are starting to formalize their AI governance approach?
Yeah, I think be mindful about it. Uh, I think there's tension in a lot of, but between a lot of things, the innovation and the data security pieces. But I think you can resolve that with a mindful approach. Um, Not doing, having the conversations and working through it, I think is much better than not doing that. I'm very glad we did what we did, because it caused everybody that was involved with that effort to really give some deep thought to like, well, what is this? And you put those words down in a document, and it becomes a commonality point. It becomes in some case a rallying point or a point of contention, but at least you are talking about the same thing. And so if you're a leader within your organization, I think having that is very worthwhile, and working to get alignment of folks around what you're going to do. Are you going to innovate, and are you okay with using tools, regardless of the data? If you don't know what the data does, some environments, that's totally fine. Some situations you can do that, others definitely not. And being mindful about that, I think is very good. So I think that'd be some of my advice.
I was
And don't just gloss over the harder perspectives when it comes to that. Like, one of the things in my professional career is like, oh, that conversation that's given me like this sick feeling in the pit of my stomach is the conversation I need to have. You need to have the difficult conversations. You should be open to having those tougher conversations around, okay, what's happening with copyrighted content in the industry, and what are our views on that? Do we support that? Though, what's happening, or, the those sorts of things. What is the environmental impact? What's external? What's getting externalized for these solutions to happen? All of those are good things to talk through and deal with directly versus just kind of ignore.
I was reading an article. I was talking about how there's just so much anxiety and stress around AI nowadays that companies who have gone out and created a policy, we're seeing increased adoption, even when these policies, I'm thinking of companies like Duolingo, who essentially mandated AI, that they're going to, have layoffs because of AI and doing those things. But by taking a stand and saying, hey, this is what we're doing with the technology, they saw greater adoption of it, because people were, they understood better, you know, this is what I can and can't do with it and other things like that. And so I just see an AI policy being just super valuable for an organization in general. So that way people can stop wondering and start, implementing. And
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And in other ways too. So there's this idea we have at Flexion, we talk sometimes about guardrails. Like, how do you enable innovation? How do you enable smart people to get their jobs done and make sure things don't go off the rails? Well, guardrails are a great way to do that. And if you have guardrails set and you're driving down the road, well, you can go a lot faster if you see where the edges are with confidence. And you know when you're getting close to that. So I think establishing the policy in many ways serves as those guardrails to say, okay, but if you're on the road, you can really press the gas.
so we've been talking about an AI policy for a long time. How do you use AI in your day job?
Yeah, so I'm a technologist at heart. Love learning, and I try to keep my hands on code as much as I can, although I'm not in customer environments writing code much, if all anymore. But when I do write code, I use AI pretty extensively. Um, I took your class, definitely used AI to help me through that, both in the literal writing of the code, but also to as kind of a accessible tutor to ask questions about concepts where I could get the concepts explained. Um, I've done some things with like, I'm a very experienced developer in some languages, but I've had a couple of experiences where it's like, oh, I want to do this thing. Hey, let me get some advice, ChatGPT. Um, what's a good language to solve this problem? Oh, R. R is a good language to solve this problem. All right. Well, I've never really written any R, but hey, can you help me through what that would look like? And so it would take me a good while to sit down and kind of learn how to write good R, what are the looping and conditional structures and all of those sorts of things. But I found myself really blown away with this R project in particular of like, oh, um, I know enough as a developer to kind of read the code that it's generating, understand what it's doing well and poorly, um, even though I'm not an R developer. So that kind of thing, where it's accelerating things for me, um, I found to be just a fantastic experience. So I use it definitely for coding. Um, I use it maybe less than other peers for the writing pieces. Um, I do proposal response writing and other kind of bunch of professional writing. I will often I'll take not so much, here's my 5 ideas, write me a few pages with that, but I will take, maybe smaller paragraphs at a time and get advice on those. Or I might, do things like, can you take this and um, put it at a sixth grade reading level? Something like that, where it will help to sort of, really polish the work that I'm doing in or refine a concept that I'm maybe struggling to express. But I tend to do that not so much in the hey, I create the structure and then I'll sort of go through, but I like to create the structure and then I have AI sort of augment the pieces for me um, as I'm needing some help.
I'm so curious. I want to get to the Magic 8 Ball. Can we talk about Matt's class?
Yeah, so Matt's class was just great. It's based on his book LLMs in Production, and It was just, I'll just be totally honest. The class was a steep climb for me. I have written some Python. I'm not a Python expert, so there were some Python components to it, but um, it was really eye-opening to me the number of really important foundational concepts around AI that felt theoretical in the first few weeks of the class that are actually really quite important when you're thinking about how are you going to make a good decision of implementing an AI solution for a customer with this array of potential customization implementation options at hand. And so the class worked through certainly a lot of the theoretical concepts, but then pretty much implementing week over week um, every one of the critical types of choices you can make when you're looking at implementing an LM production. And then the culmination of the class is a project, an independent project. And so um, I'm kind of a hobbyist with microprocessor stuff in other contexts. And so I thought, oh, a good project for me might be to put some constraints around the hardware side of it. Um, how much of an LLM can I run on a Raspberry Pi? And then the idea was to take the idea of a magic eight ball and make an LLM magic eight ball. So it would give you not just an answer, but it would give you some sort of a narrative, a fortune teller narrative, basically. So I got the biggest Raspberry Pi hardware wise I could get, and then ran locally, no network connectivity at all. Um, Ran an LM speech recognition, input categorization. Is it a yes, no question or is it not a yes, no question? And then generate a fortune and based on the fortune, give you some narrative around that. And kind of a funny anecdote is my original plan was to prompt optimize, consider the user's input, come up with a reasonable of the possible magic eight ball answers. There's like 16. Like there's some, yes, no, and then late, ask again later kind of thing. So of those, um, come up with a reasonable response to the user and then justify that response with a narrative. And what I found was that the models I was using were very sycophantic about it. So it was basically almost never giving you a no answer if you asked a yes no question. It was always like yes, you should quit your job and move to Florida. The future's bright. Go for it. So I actually switched the implementation up where it made a random choice of the magic eight ball answers, and then it generated a narrative, then it justified the narrative of the random choice, and that ended up working out quite well. So it was a fun way to kind of kick the tires on a LLM implementation.
It was quite fun. He set it up so that way, like the Magic 8 Ball was another member in the Zoom meeting, and because it woke on wake words when when other students presented, I'd often be like, "Hey, Magic 8 Ball, should they get an A in the class?" And so I was having fun with it, and a lot of the other students were as well. So it was a very fun project.
Yeah, and the class was great. I learned so much.
All right. I believe we're getting low on time here. So let's talk about some of the learnings that we've had. Thank you, Scott, for joining. I think we've all learned a lot about defining AI policies and what goes into it, and that defining AI policies is best when working with multidisciplinary teams, bringing multiple different views in. It can definitely be a harder path to walk, but ultimately it supports buy-in in the end and a better product. Policies are deliverables that can drive difficult conversations from where your organization stands on environmental issues, intellectual property, and data privacy. A policy can help your organization stop wondering and start gaining alignment around what you are going to do with AI to help your organization move forward with solutions together. Uh, all of your AI problems can be foretold and solved with a Raspberry Pi and a little prompt engineering. So that's a wrap for today's episode of Learning Curve. If you enjoyed this conversation, do us a favor, subscribe, share it with your team, and maybe even your CTO struggling with defining a good AI policy.
And don't miss our next episode. Until then, I'm Holly Fake.
And I'm Matt Sharp. Thanks for tuning in to the Learning Curve. Keep experimenting, keep asking better questions, and we'll see you next time.